little while ago, I was asked if I had any headcanons for Outlander characters, so I wanted to share some of my favorites. As a clarification, a headcanon is something that a fan of a show or a book imagines to be true about a character, even though the story hasn't supplied enough information for us to confirm or deny that it is true. So, these are my personal takes. You are entitled to your own. These are just my personal ones. So the first one is about Jamie and how he happened to get this wood carving that says Sonny on the back from his older brother, Willie. Now, the only thing we know in the books is that he was 5 years old when Willie had given it to him. He carved it out of the wood from a cherry tree, and it has been a prized possession of Jamie's ever since. He keeps it in his sporran, very close to his person, and it means a lot to him. But the books never fully dive into how he ended up with it, or if there was a bigger story about why Willie felt compelled to carve it for him. Now, Sonny, the name on the back, is actually a nickname for Jamie's middle name, Alexander. It's kind of like a shortened version of the name Alexander, or like a lowland name. So in my headcanon, I've always thought that Willie gave it to Jamie as a token of respect following maybe like a scare that they had on one of their escapades through the land around Lallybroch together. The only snakes that are native to Scotland that are venomous are adder snakes, and I like to think that Jamie might have saved Willie or prevented him from being bit by one of the days that they were out playing in the woods or something, and to thank him, Willie carved him this snake. Willie died of smallpox at age 11, and Jamie at that point was only 6, so he had received this 1 year before that. And then Jamie lost his mother and his younger brother, Robert, during childbirth. So it's no wonder that this piece of Jamie's childhood means so much to him and has remained with him throughout his life. It was likely one of his fondest, more concrete memories that he had, and it was given to him after winning the respect of his older brother, who in the books he cites as thinking he was like God or Christ, or he just really revered and admired him so much. And so I think that being gifted something like this, maybe in recognition of him being a man and behaving as, a person of similar age and experience as his older brother, meant so much to him and is likely why he held on to it in this way. In the show, we see it when Fergus pickpockets it from Jamie in Paris. This doesn't happen in the books, but I really liked this. And Jamie also sends it back in the box with all of the letters to the future for Brianna and Roger to find in the books as well. So Sonny makes multiple appearances in the show and the books. Now, my second headcanon thought has to do with Blood of My Blood and Claire's parents, actually. So we know we're getting a show about them, a prequel show, and we know a little bit about Brian and Ellen just from the books and the history and what's been written, but we really don't know anything about Henry and Julia. And I've said this multiple times, but Diana has said that she really has no interest in writing about them, so the show can really take this anywhere they want. But this is where I thought they, were and what they were like when I was imagining them in my head. Claire was born at the end of World War I. She was born in 1918, and I like to imagine that her parents met towards the beginning of the war, closer to probably 1914 or so. At that point in England, women were starting to fill more of the jobs that previously had been held by men as they left and went off to war. So Julia would have likely been one of those pioneering women. There were countless strikes for equal pay taking place, and we know that Claire is a very strong, independent, and opinionated woman. I like to believe that she gets that from her mother. Now, in my mind, Henry, her father, was a scholar, similar to his brother, Quentin, Uncle Lamb, Beecham. At this time, I think he probably would have found himself feeling a little bit useless in that profession during the time of, the war. And Julia would have been in the middle of all of the women's rights movements, fighting for equal pay, perhaps working in a role like a bank teller or a clerk somewhere. I like to think that these two met with a classic meet cute, where Henry had lived this very privileged life with high profile connections and, forged that persona through the connections of his parents and scholarly peers. And Julia mistakenly finds herself in that social circle one day and completely knocks his socks off with just her candor and forward ways of thinking and this like fire within her that we see Claire has too. She challenges him, just like Claire challenges Jamie, and treats him differently than any woman he's come across prior to her. Similar to how Jamie can't help but admire Claire's more outspoken nature, I feel like Julia had that same fire within her, and Henry just couldn't ignore her, even if he wanted to. And I would love if she writes a book about them eventually, but I think this show is going to be as close as we get to getting any sort of confirmation one way or another about their personalities. When Claire was born, I like to think that Julia would have cut back on her hours at work, but probably maintained some sort of autonomy because she had worked so hard to get this job that she had been fighting for. And here's where things get a little interesting. I know that because Claire can time travel, people assume that these two are time travelers as well. I don't know if both of them are. I would assume one of them is. And in my headcanon, I don't think either of them would find out that they were able to time travel. I genuinely think they just got in a car accident and died quite young. But it would be very interesting if one of them were. I would assume it would be her father, Henry, just be given the line and connections to France. But that's something that would be an added layer of interest. Do I think they need that in order to be an interesting couple that I would want to watch a show about? Not necessarily. So I'm super curious where the show decides to take their storyline. So let me ask, do you have any Outlander headcanons that you have thought about in the past, something that the books hasn't shed light on but you've been thinking in the back of your mind? Leave me a comment.